Hi, friends. Yeah, okay, I haven't done anything. um, uh, a poet earlier said that people were like, when's Gibby's reading? Thank you, Talene. I'm about to betray that vibe so hard. But it's today, it turns out. Um, yeah. Oh, wait. Mer? Mer. What? Wait. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's gonna be so weird. What an interesting thing. Um, okay, cool. Craft lectures. I want to start obviously with gratitude for all of you here gathered, with gratitude to Leah, Adam, and Travis, and the staff of this conference for how they facilitate our gathering. I'm always really immensely grateful to be on this mountain. This is my 5th year here, my first year as faculty, and I appreciate the grace that I think is generated here. I also want to note that we are gathering during Israel's and the United States' ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. And so this craft talk is, in some ways, a distraction from attending to life. I want to prime us with an incantation. I want to offer this poem from Dinesh Smith, who led the very first poetry workshop I ever participated in at Tin House in 2018. Dinesh continues to be a North Star for me, and so here I'd like to invoke them via the first 3 lines of this poem, Anti-Poetica. There is no poem greater than feeding someone. There is no poem wiser than kindness. There is no poem more important than being good to children. I invite you to support the Samir Project via Workshops for Gaza and any of the survival funds that are found at gazadirect.com. I also urge you to read the entirety of Dinesh Smith's book, Bluff, which I think places a really gorgeous, generous pressure on what writing might do, what it might be, who the writer might be, and what they might be for. Secondly, given the categorization of what I'm about to do, which is a craft talk, I'd like to note that since December of 2023, all of my writing and thinking has moved in the shadow of Fargo Nisintabaki's essay, Notes on Craft, Writing in the Hour of Genocide. So I urge you to read it and hope that it will haunt you and your writing as well. Okay, let's be witches. I would love for you to find a page in whatever you might be writing in today, like a physical, actual page. If you don't have one, that's fine. There might be ways to do this with a cell phone, but if you have a page, I think that'd be kind of ideal for what we're gonna do. Paper is preferred. On that page, I would love for you to, while I'm talking, make a list of all the things that you want to destroy with your writing. Write a list of your enemies. Find a desire path made from your ugliest feelings. Name them, list them on that page, all the ops. What are the things your writing is trying to destroy? Try to stick to one page. You can keep being hateful on that page while I talk. What I will be covering in this lecture will not be novel, but rather a conjuring of knowledges passed down, some perverted by the impermanence of my bad memory and shoddy note-taking, a haphazard grimoire that I've cobbled up as I keep asking, why am I still writing when there might be other, more immediate uses for an able body, like throwing a rock, like helping to dismantle an arms manufacturing plant, like so many other things a body could be doing. There are so many other things we could be doing. Still, I think we insist on writing because we believe that the written word could serve as a kind of vessel that might preserve the very will power that could inspire a body to launch a stone or slap a soldier or fire a gun or throw a brick through a window. The word might be a sheath that encases the most dangerous thing we could be to the tyrant, to the state, to our enemies who kill us fast and slow. Allowing that desire for retribution or justice or pettiness to live beyond our comically mortal bodies and be passed down in a script, in a poem, in a small spell that might point us towards possibilities for undoing the world as it has been shaped for us. So today I want to talk about curses as seeds, spines, or motors for dramatic texts, And I also want to pay homage to the poem as the architecture that contains structures and scores the register of the curse for many of us, to gesture towards the incantatory, as poet Tracy Fouad might suggest. I want to apologize in advance, of course, for the amount of times that I will be referencing some musicals. I'm sorry, or you're welcome. Whatever is more fitting. On curses and why. The title of this lecture borrows its name from an iconic Mexican soap opera from the late 80s called El Maleficio, the evil curse. Maleficio. I am fascinated by the word's insistence on ill intent as the thing that sprouts a root system of action, a technology of doing bad in the service of satiating the ugly feelings left in the wake of unfulfilled desire. The characters of El Maleficio are hardly people in need of justice. The plot largely centers itself on the desires and machinations of a wealthy Mexican impresario who we soon discover has amassed power, wealth, and influence due to a long-standing practice of communing with demonic forces. That's the daddy over there in the corner. The well-loved telenovela gained an extremely popular following in Mexico alongside El extraño retorno de Diana Salazar, another telenovela that concerns itself with the supernatural and follows a love triangle cursed to reincarnate across centuries and doomed to reenact the same fate in every timeline. Everybody dies. Anyway, back to Maleficio. Imagine, if you will, Succession, but explicitly demonic, telekinetic, pyrokinetic, a kind of explicit expose of a Mexican ruling class as so impossibly evil that it can only be explained through the metaphysical. The show at once lulls the viewer into fascination with the Mexican ruling class and repulsion for it. We hate the rich, yes, and so we absolutely must watch them be bad. We must watch them be devilish, maybe to exercise our own desires for wealth, and perhaps to also exercise our muscle for class aspiration. The telenovela comes almost 10 years prior to the ushering of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, perhaps an omen, perhaps a canary in the mine, and far more than likely a cultural arm of the state that would grant Televisa the status of a quietly state-run operation. Anyway, the 80s, what a fabulous time for class resentment and bad feelings. I start here with the word maleficio because my childhood dictates a fascination with curses, because my queerness dictates a fascination with witches, with the supernatural, and because my Mexicanness is less rooted in a proud nationalism of a country I left and longed for, and more actively centered around the fact that Mexico, too, lives with colonial aftermaths. And I resent having to have left my home, and I must contend with the fact that I am not quite a person, but a set of manufactured circumstances. I am the debris of international policies and its effects on children who didn't know what NAFTA was and had to live it anyway. I am transnational refuse that has used the written and spoken word to make a kind of bootleg subjectivity. Some days I feel less like an artist and more like a consultant, and I'm very proud of very little, but the times when I've managed to steal from those who steal my labor anyway, I'm saying I am angry that the world is set up in this way, so I want to do bad. I want to do bad things to those who have made the world this way for me. I imagine that this is where you might be as well. So I want to talk about curses because I think they are the most naked way we might say, I want what I am owed. I have come to collect, and otherwise I will be terrible and powerful and glorious. And yes, the written word and the speech act are perhaps never as effective as a machete in my hand, but the written word and the speech act might help me become braver. The curse might be the place where I rehearse my wants most. The incantatory structure of the curse foregrounds the I as a vast landscape in becoming, our will as the only thing that might be in the room, a kaiju made from want, a threat that makes the I more powerful than previously imagined. The immediacy of the I in a curse and its straight aim at a you. The statement, "Till you do right by me, everything you even think about gon' fail," The jail you plan for me is the one you're gonna rot in. Then, of course, Miss Seeley's finger is pointed at Mr. and the utterance, everything you've done to me, already done to you. And suddenly, power is presented for what it is, a glamour, an entity of dust to be shaken off. So yes, how could one not be entranced by the audacity of the pointed finger and the steady stance, the unimaginable steadfastness to say, I refuse anything less than everything that has been taken from me for years, decades, centuries, and unless it is given to me, may nothing you plant bloom. May the screams of my dead haunt you until justice, until liberation. I am fascinated and love all the things I lovingly call curses because they reinvent the dynamic of harm and imbue the wounded with power. It is the armor and the sword. It makes us impossibly large and lasting long after we are gone. And who would dare stand up to the state, to the king, to the emperor, to the fascist in this way, but the witch, the enchantress, the healer, the steward of the land, the seer, the prophet, the poet. So yes, I find the curse tremendously potent as a technology of want. And yes, I also know that you may disagree with what I have here classified as curses, and also I invite us to crack open what we might see as a curse. In times such as these, and these are always our times, I find a great deal of solace, respite, power in the potential for the curse to help us structure despair. The curse might be a strategy for organizing and activating hopelessness. I am here as an acolyte of rage, having been failed time and time again by the whitewashed gospels of impossible joys that exclude struggle. The directive to smile and rest and self-care while never being moved towards any kind of collective self-defense. The curse, for me, feels like a response to what poet Denez Smith calls the joy industrial complex. The way that a politic of joy might be defanged if it is only ever shaped as a funnel toward marketing and ticket sales for nonprofit theaters who can't even denounce genocide, and so to continue to enable the power of the state. Similar killjoy critiques have been levied by artists and activists like Jakia Carruthers and Sandra Ibarra, and there are certainly writers like Agnes Berinsky and Julia Jarko who invite us to write from inside hopelessness. Not because hopelessness is an endpoint that denotes defeat or resignation, but because hopelessness is a location. For me, hopelessness is a laboratory where when we have exhausted other possibilities, we might invent new ones. Hopelessness teaches me to invent spells. When I am hopeless, when I most want to use my most corrosive and poisonous words against my enemies, when I most want my breath and my fingers to bring about the undoing of an unjust world, that is perhaps when I feel most alive. I want to treat this next section as a small exercise. So I want you to take the paper where you've listed your enemies. If it's in a book, I'm gonna ask you to sacrifice the paper and rip it from the binding it's in. And little by little, as I read the next poem that I'm gonna sort of read out loud and then talk about, I would love for you to make your enemies disappear. I want you to actually sort of like engage in the physical process of either like striking them out, crossing them out, making them smaller, folding the paper in on itself, maybe ripping them. It's okay, I think sound is good. You're gonna take your paper little by little as I read this poem. I want you to destroy your enemies. Maybe you fold the paper until it is small. You'll do this as I read the next poem. Feel free to chant along if you want to in a whisper or jump in vocally if you feel compelled. Here is a poem. And you can focus on the paper and then sort of let the words happen. I must become a menace to my enemies. Dedicated to the poet Agostinho Neto, President of the People's Republic of Angola, 1976. I will no longer lightly walk behind a one of you who fear me. Be afraid. I plan to give you reasons for your jumpy fits and facial tics. I will not walk politely on the pavements anymore. And this is dedicated in particular to those who hear my footsteps or the insubstantial rattling of my grocery cart and then turn around, see me, and hurry on, away from this impressive terror I must be. I plan to blossom bloody on an afternoon, surrounded by my comrades singing terrible, revenge, and merciless accelerating rhythms. But I have watched a blind man studying his face. I have set the table in the evening and sat down to eat the news. Regularly, I have gone to sleep. There is no one to forgive me. The dead do not give a damn. I, like a lover who drops her dime into the phone just as the subway shakes into the station, wasting her message, canceling the question of her call, fulminating or forgetful but late and always after the fact that could save or condemn me. I must become the action of my fate. 2. How many of my brothers and sisters will they kill before I teach myself retaliation? Shall we pick a number? South Africa, for instance, do we agree that more than 10,000 in less than a year, but less than 5,000 slaughtered in more than 6 months what is the matter with me? I must become a menace to my enemies. And if I ever let you slide, who should be extirpated from my universe, who should be cauterized from Earth completely, landowner jerk-offs of the first terrorist degree, that let my body fail my soul in its bedeviled lecheries. And if I ever let love go, because the hatred and the whisperings become a phantom dictate, I obey in lieu of impulse and realities, the blossoming flamingos of my wild mimosa trees, then let love freeze me out. I must become a menace to my enemies. I categorize this poem as a curse for reasons I'll go over it in just a bit. But I've been reading a lot of June Jordan for the last few months. Specifically after the election last November, I kept returning back to interviews with June Jordan, who was like the only person who was making any sense about being alive. I really encourage you to go watch her interview at the Brockport Writers something or other. But yeah, she's been a compass, and I've been thinking a lot about June Jordan. I return to her poems at least once a day. Small spells I cast on myself when I cannot pry myself away from the apocalyptic times on my phone. She too was speaking from apocalyptic times, in them and to them. The poem enacts many of the features of the curse, from its title, The Witch's Eye, and the invocation of the enemy as the you. I must become a menace to my enemies. The poem, like the curse, is a poem written against, in conflict with, the yous and theys throughout a clear target for the curse. The reason for the curse stated throughout, all the blood shed that has made the curse the only course of possible action. In its third section, a contractual clause. And if I ever let you slide, then later we get, then let my body fail my soul, then let love freeze me. The curse demands steadfastness, obligation with the desire to besiege the enemy. It demands loyalty to a cause. Finally, the curse relies on repetition, the incantation of the line, I must become a menace to my enemies. For me, the curse is the song we sing in the dark times. It is the testament we leave as our singing about the dark times. R.I.P. Brecht, you would have hated these dark times, diva. The curse is where we might be Ursula at the cauldron, brewing a response to exile. Justice for Ursula, who was teaching us about contract law before it was relevant to us. Anyway, what I am saying is that I love curses. I love curses for how upright they make our spines and how steady they make our hands. The witch is not a warlord. The witch does not intend to win. The witch intends to make an impact. The witch is always in the future. The warlord is always struggling with a present. For their promise that we matter to the world, curses also promise that we can affect it, afflict it, infect it, summon a new one with the flick of the wrist, with the tongue's sharpest edge. So now I'll speak about curses and their role in dramatic writing a bit more, because it's supposed to be about playwriting. About their structures, their elements, about why they feel so ideal for playwrights. But I think there are so many instances in literature across genres where I'm like, oh, this is a curse. Like, there are so many pieces of writing that I cannot shake from my brain, because when I read them, I felt such a kindred rage with whoever scripted them before I arrived to the text. I'll end with a prompt at the very end so that we can be like, oh, craft, absolutely. Curses and in dramatic writing. The story starts like this. The downtrodden, unhoused woman comes to the door and begs the wealthy prince for sanctuary, and when she is turned away with spectacular cruelty, she reveals herself to be a powerful enchantress who transforms the prince into a beast until he can find his own humanity through love. Or perhaps the story starts with the woman, once a princess and now a witch, mourning her exile, her crumbling relationship with Jason, and praying to her old gods that they may grant her the strength to bring down her enemies with fire, with poison. Or perhaps the story starts with the witch bursting into the baker's house and recounting the theft of her garden by the baker's father, and recounting the curse she has placed on this baker. I'm so happy. Thank you for your head nod, Yoni. The price for stealing from her fecund garden is a barren life. No buns in the oven for the baker. Or perhaps the story hurls towards its gayest frenzy when the witch, in a desperate act to save her lover, reads from an ancient tome and transforms him into a scarecrow to prevent his death. No good deed goes unpunished. In the story, there is a witch, which in this case is to say that the curse requires first a conduit for magic, a practitioner with desires so impossible that only magic might intervene. So the curse requires a character that wants deeply, and someone or something in the way of this want. Structurally, usually, it is like a structure of power, if it is a witch. I start with the witch because I find in this archetype a home for the politically disenfranchised. I am not alone in this. There's a tradition of this, of course. And because so often the fulfillment of the desires of the disenfranchised would signal an end to the state's power. I start here because, as playwright Julia Jarko reminds us, dramatic writing, plays, are machines for desire. Yes, the characters want, and so then too the playwright wants, for the play to happen, for the show to be produced so that we, the audience, might collectively witness the fulfillment of that desire, and perhaps in doing so satiate some desire of our own. We watch people want because we often want people to get what they deserve across varying registers. I argue that the curse in many forms of dramatic writing depicts the most naked forms of desire for a character, an open wanting that has become so large it must speak in the more than human tone and reach for the spiritual, the infernal, the primordial, or the divine in order to manifest. For example, in Clara Barron's Dance Nation, a dancing troupe composed of young women and one young man cravenly express all of their desires on the precipice of puberty, instigated by the various ways that dance competitions allow them to explore who they might be in relation to their wanting. Think dance moms, like a little bit of Yellow Jackets, maybe Our Town, I don't know. But really think dance moms. Claire Barron was deeply inspired to write this play after watching Dance Moms, and states that the motor of the play came from a deep desire to want, and how often a world structured by patriarchy prevents us from wanting fully. Throughout the play, the young women on this fictional dance team speak to us in monologue, often from a place in the future. long after they've left their dance team, defying time and the body's chronological mandates to speak frankly about the things they want most: friendship, power, autonomy, the ability to fly, sexual empowerment, triumph. By the end of the play, we see all of the members of this dance team together, wanting. Amina, the star of the dance team, and a character who quietly stifles her desire for success throughout the play, then emerges as a kind of conduit for everybody's want in the last moments of the play, in the middle of this sort of teenage bacchanalia. Here I will examine the last pages of the play. I said examine, I'm going to read. The last pages of the play. Baron insists on the following staging. So I'm going to do this with my hand to sort of note the line breaks in the stage directions, and then I'll perform. Amina dancing. Amina dancing. Amina dancing. She has her crown. She has her fangs. She casts a spell on all of them. They grow taller. Their shadows become 12 foot long. Their voices become the voice of some vengeful ancient pagan god. Amina dances. She dances. She dances. She is a tiny, whirling dot. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win. Not because of you. Not because of Luke. I'm gonna do it myself. Over the years, I will watch as others fall away, give up, lose courage. I will keep going. I will keep going. Something will tell me to keep going. I will fail at first, but I will keep going. People won't like me, and other people will be better than me, but I will keep going, and then one day the tide will start to turn. Inevitable, unstoppable, like the leaves falling off the trees. Winter is coming, and I am the winter. You cannot deny me. My entire life will be a victory, and when they ask me how I did it, I will say that I didn't listen to anyone. I had no teachers, no mentors, no parents. I am thankful for nothing but myself. I rode the wave for 11 years, 12 years, 13 years. I rode the wave for 20 years, 21 years, 25 years. I rode the wave for 30 years, 40 years, 50. I rode the wave like I always knew how to ride the wave, and others kept falling away, but I kept riding till I was alone. I was alone. I was alone. Amina dancing. She's athletic, vicious, stunning. She absolutely dominates. She turns out to us. She hisses. She gnashes her fangs. This monologue ends the play. It is the last beat of the show before the lights come back up and the audience is asked to leave the theater. And it is for this very reason that I would argue that this is the play's curse. In it, the character speaks to us from a kind of present future, in the room with us and at once years ahead. Her power and prowess as a dancer, as a champion, allowing for time travel to occur, placing us in the position of the naysayer, the doubter, the non-believer. She'll show us. She'll show us all. In previous interviews, Baron has pointed to this moment as the seed of the play, its motor, the heart, the most transparent showcase of her desires for this piece, her own desire to win. Here, Amina promises her own victory in the face of what might feel impossible. She is against us, as we must be against her, even if we are not. Baron insists on fangs and claws, never specifying in the stage directions if these fangs are literal or figurative. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is possible for a young woman to want so much with such clarity against a world that would have her be otherwise, that she sprouts fangs and claws that cut through and across time. She is a champion. The monologue, of course, contains some of the features of the incantatory register: repetition, an insistence on an increasingly large I, the language of dissension and ascension, a want revealed in its most concentrated form and unleashed upon the audience to haunt them, to follow them out of the theater. So yes, the curse might be exactly how the story starts, such as in Beauty and the Beast or Into the Woods, but so too, it may be the sharpest point in the playwright's spear. the last blow inflicted upon the audience, and leaving us with the haunting ephemera of the playwright's desires. I'm gonna do a thing that I don't like to do, but I'm gonna talk about my work. Whatever. I'm gonna talk about a moment in the solo show and documents, which I workshopped here in 2019 as a fellow. Shout out to Lina Padilla and Dan O'Brien, who were workshop leaders at the time. In 2008, one of my brothers was deported during a raid in his workplace. In 2009, I had a second brother who was deported. On Documents, the play that I'm going to talk about is a solo show. I didn't start calling it a play until now that it's sort of like a calcified thing that lives in like the archive of like my home. At the time I was like, oh, it's this performance thing that I do. It's autobiographical. The show is comprised from all of the poems that I would write as I would travel to detention centers to visit my brothers. I am the only person in my immediate family who speaks English, and so I was their primary translator, and I spent a lot of time trying to keep my feelings about the deportations in order so that I could like be a person who was present with my family. And then the show happened. I wrote the show in 2017. I finished it in 2018, and that's when I premiered it in Austin. That's a lot of context. I want to talk a little bit about Artifact as a part of Curses. There are some playwrights who do not start by writing a scene, but rather getting into a room with like 4 or 5 objects and then just starting to like make a scene with the objects, and then the writing sort of happens as a result. When we staged this, I asked Maggie Armendariz, who was a set designer, she was like, what is the show about? And I was like, I think it's about papers and water. So she made this sort of like giant wave. All of the papers you see up there are printouts from my and my family's different immigration forms. I'm gonna read from a scene. I'm gonna read a scene from the play. For context, my brother has just been deported, and we are traveling back from the. It was the very first time that we visited him in Juarez after he had been made to self-deport, actually. And the words break all 3 of us, but no one says anything, and we leave like nothing's happened, and it will be months before I see him again. And on the way back to El Paso, sitting in the truck, my mother will say, ay, no, cómo me da tristeza verlo así, tan solo, nomás los perros. Pero bueno, pues, lo que está hecho, está hecho. We returned to El Paso, to the papers on our table where my brother once sat, the white fibers and the black ink replacing Gobelin's skin. Lo que está hecho, está hecho. And some days I wish the table would break under the weight of the papers, so I could point to it and say that is the weight that my mother carries on her legs and on her back, always the guilt for the uneven citizenship of 2 siblings. Lo que está hecho, está hecho. And some days I wish the table would break under the weight of the papers so I could point to it and say that is the weight of this thing that sits in my bag, my passport, not a brotherly love, but this thing clawing at my spine, clinging to my tongue, this thing that reminds me that my citizenship means that someone elsewhere always suffers. Lo que está hecho, está hecho. And some days I wish the table would break under the weight of the papers, and the papers would burst into flames, and every border would break open, and the lines between here and there wouldn't be. And he would be here and not there. He would be everywhere. And there would be no countries, just kin. Instead, here is our table, littered with papers, and somewhere in an archive are some forms my brother signed. Did I tell you they gave him the option to stay detained or deport himself? Imagine you are in a river you cannot swim, and the water rushes to ask you, how fast would you like to drown? How would you like to remember what the desert feels like on the other side of that bridge? I employ this example from the show because I was doing a run of the show in 2022 at the Los Angeles Theater Center. And I'd been doing the show since 2018. It was the fall of 2022. And everyone was so excited about a Biden administration that was still detaining immigrants and putting them in detention centers. And I did not know what to do with the dissonance of understanding that the job of a president is always to deport, that the non-citizen is always created to be sacrificed in the service of creating citizenship. And so I was doing the show in front of people, and I was like, you can clap, and also like I'm furious, like I don't know what to do. And so I that specific section for me gained a new kind of kerosene as I would do it every night, because I was sort of thinking, if no one in the audience is going to do anything about this, the best thing I can do is like put so much effort into making this performance and sweat so much on stage and like be as loud as possible, so that there's some imprint of me that like leaves a curse behind on this country that I need to like end. And then the show finished, and we struck the set, and I think I felt better when I left that production, because the intention every night was not to entertain the audience, but to practice that curse. I employ this example because I wish to highlight the structure of curses here. Adjacent to the gesture made by poets like June Jordan, Jimmy Santiago Vaca, Patricia Smith, and the drama of figures like Medea, this moment in Undocuments moves through what I would call some basic requirements for a curse. An eye on the precipice of desire, an impossible want made so by a powerful enemy, the naming of both the enemy and the desire and the conditions of the curse, repetition, breath, body, text, direction, artifact, and deep intent, witnesses, a circle, a coven. I want to be frank here and say I do not think I will live to see the end of empire, and that I do not believe I will live to see the abolition of borders here in the United States. Such revolutions cost life, and if so be it, so be it. I am saying that the curse asks us to think beyond the limitations of the body, to allow ourselves to want a better world for our descendants and consequences for our enemies. So to want justice for a future that is always imperiled by our enemies. I'm saying that the curse might be a clever way to disguise our most corrosive desires, or perhaps not disguise them at all, but enshrine them, to wrap them in silks so that others may carry them on in our names. I'm saying the curse is a powerful, gorgeous technology for desire, and one that I believe moves through drama's lifeblood. Want. We want. We live because we want. And to invoke June Jordan once again, to live means to act. And to act is sometimes to play. Action is life in the service of want. And I, like so many of us, want more life. I must become a menace to my enemies, because my enemies are against life. In December of 2023, my childhood friend, my favorite playwright, Victor I. Cáceres, placed a curse on New York Theater Workshop. Cáceres enacted an HIV med strike until the theater denounced the ongoing genocide of Palestinian people and called for a ceasefire, offering what playwright Diane Xavier calls the honesty of their body to this curse, for this cause. In a series of Instagram videos, Cáceres offers their medications in ritual, sacrifices them to fire, back to the earth. Their video captions, often in the form of incantation against a theater industry that recuses itself from engaging with the world, but will likely be interested in carrion, in the dead in decades to come, will flock to their bodies later, vultures. Of course, the theater said nothing, made statements that disappeared Victor's body, a feeble press release as an ill-wrought counterspell. I thought then of my own cowardice. how cursed I was with it too, the desire for a play to be produced. I thought of all the people who privilege keeping the lights on in a building, keeping their seats in that building so they turn away from the preciousness of life. I think still today of the ongoing silence of people I thought were mentors, people I thought were artists who revealed themselves to be merchants, people who use their work to talk about disability and liberation and borders and life, who hollow out every word they write with their silence. Bless the witches for the clarity they gift the world. Bless the victors. Conclusion. I have been fascinated by the curse for some time because it seems I only write in the wake of heartbreak. And the world breaks my heart every day. For years, if you listen long enough, if you let it, the world will break your heart. And I say the world when I should say the government, national and municipal, when I should say countries break my heart every day, but not the mountains, not the deserts, not the people who know how to teach life. I say the world every day is on fire and the people I love most are always burning. I'm saying people are burning now and we are funding the fire. So I'm saying every day I am already a cursed thing because I am a citizen, because of W-2s and 1099s and every direct deposit that goes into bad faith accounts. So I'm saying every day that I want to write, I want to do so to end things. And if I don't get my way, and if my enemies do not acquiesce to my want for loving life, then let every meal they attempt turn to ash. I'm petty and too obsessed with being a witch. Yes, this is a craft talk, perhaps. And perhaps there's something to say here about how to deploy the elements of a curse into writing, though I imagine you have already done so. If you have not, then imagine this. Imagine your enemy. Name them. Hold the picture clear, steady in your eye. Remember every injury and how they inflicted it. Imagine yourself larger, more vast than you've ever been. Imagine your power, what element might flow into it. Bring together an item or two, something magical, something to amplify your power, something to represent your enemy. Prepare the table for your sacred work. Write a small incantation, maybe only 3 sentences, no more than 5. Make the sounds undeniable. Write this all as if it were a recipe. Write this all as if it was a grimoire. Write to your apprentice so they may pick up your work. Write to your actor with love.